Hello, I'm Jenya DeLima. Welcome to Writing and Editing, the author-focused podcast that takes a whole person approach to everything related to both writing and editing. Authors have several choices available to them when it comes to marketing their books. One of these options is the book tour, but how should you pick a tour company? And will the results make up for the time and expense involved? Author and podcast host Richie Billing conducted an experiment to answer these questions, and he's here to share his results. This is our book tours worth it. Well, it's always lovely to chat with you.
Yeah, lovely to chat with you as well. How are you getting on?
Really well. How about you?
Good, yeah. Working on all your edits that you've done for me in a couple of
That's
projects. So
also
yeah,
good to hear.
very helpful as always.
Oh, thank you. Well, would you
Yeah.
like to introduce yourself for people who don't know you and maybe share a little bit about the book that you used with this book tour experiment?
Yeah, so obviously my name is Richie Billing and I am a writer from Liverpool. May have heard the Fantasy Writers Toolshed podcast popping up about. That's my podcast as well. And I've got a website, richiebilling.com. Love writing fantasy. I love writing literary fiction as well. And I just write whatever stories pop into my head. But they mostly focus on like human issues and they're the kind of themes I like to explore. But I think fantasy is what I'm drawn to most of all because I just love good versus evil. Like, what is it? Like, what is each side all about? And this eternal struggle. Um, and I like to play around by taking my sort of theory on what these things are, and I'll just write, and I'll write stories that maybe are about homelessness in Liverpool, but I still keep in mind that sort of good versus evil thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still in the same universe as a fantasy story about magic, weapons, or something. I've always tried to promote books as well because I'm not very patient. I have patience with certain things, but not with certain individuals. Let's say like literary agents and editors. So I like to, as much as I
Well, not
can,
all
try.
editors.
Not you, Jenny. But yeah, I like to, as much as possible, take the sort of power out of their hands. And last year I did an experiment with one of my novels, Pariah's Lament, and worked with 7 or 8 different book marketing companies. These companies specifically focus on book tours, which we'll speak a little bit about shortly, I imagine. But yeah, that's experiment was quite interesting. It sort of gave me a good insight into how effective that form of marketing is.
Yeah. How much research did you put into researching each of these book tour companies before you decided to sign with them?
Well, what I did first was reach out to the community that I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
And people suggested different companies and stuff. So I made a short list that way. And then I did research as well, just Google, obviously. Start with Google and then
Yes.
just see what you can find. Make a list of everybody. Like some, for example, specialize in romance,
Right.
and won't bother with fantasy or whatever other genres. So you just gotta make sure that when you're doing your research, you're picking out, not just picking any name, you're filtering it and looking to see if they're going to be a good fit. Because what you're looking for with these companies is their network.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking to access their network because they should, in theory, have contacts with influencers, social media people, um, maybe media contacts as well, so that they could pitch and sell your book more easily. And if they've got an audience there, that's what you're paying the fee for.
Well, did you look up some of their past tours to see how those went? Maybe to see what the engagement was like from some of the different influencers they chose?
Well, the tricky thing is with a lot of these companies is the extent of the knowledge that you're able to glean about them is limited to what's on the websites.
Oh,
So if and I'm always, because I work in digital marketing, I build websites and I manage and grow them. So I know that you've got complete control over every bit of content on a website. So people put testimonials on there. There's no way of verifying whether them testimonials
oh,
are real.
exactly.
I like websites like Trustpilot and stuff like that because they are independent, and you can literally trust them a bit more. But it's tough because just straying into like the pricing of these things, like they're not cheap. So if you've got a limited budget, it's a big gamble to take, and you
Mhm.
need to be sure that you're gonna get what you want. So just as an example, of range here, just of the yeah, so there's 11 bookstore companies on this list I've got. And the range goes from $60 up to $130,
Yeah.
$150, sorry.
And then what do you
So it's
have to include with that? So that's just the price for them arranging the tour, right? And then you also had to provide books, I'm assuming. So did
yeah,
they
some
have
of
to
it's
be, yeah, and did they allow you to do e-copies or did they all have to be physical books?
well, some of the influencers that they work with and like some of the better posts that you get on social media, they're when the person has the physical copy and they're showing the book and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, One of the frustrations was that you couldn't restrict who got the physical copies. I was just told, oh, 8 reviewers have requested physical copies. And now if you're shipping them to America from the UK, you're looking at like
Yeah.
20 quid. It's a big expense. So 55 books, for example, is like £100. It's an expense. On the flip side, if you get someone who's got a physical copy of the book and they've got a massive following and they do a really good post, it could be well worth it.
Like,
So
yeah, you
just
were
seeing
saying
how
that you
much
don't get it.
control you've got.
Yeah, but that goes back exactly the whole control thing. If you are not able to choose who gets those physical copies, or even, I'm going to guess also, you don't have any say in which influencers they pick to even be on the tour.
Yeah.
So,
And to be
what sort
honest,
of
they don't even
gigs did you
pick.
get?
They don't even pick. So what these companies will do is they'll have a network and they'll just like email a network or contact the network and say, this book's up for a tour. Who wants to sign up? Now, nobody could sign up. Like this is what happened on one of the tours. Nobody signed up.
Oh,
So they still took me money. And what
oh
they did
no.
is they just copied and pasted like the same information about the book and just posted it on like 4 or 5 random blogspot websites, which nobody goes on. And then they charged like $100.
That's awful.
Yeah. Well, that's not even the worst of it.
What is the worst of it?
The worst is the fake reviews.
Oh, yes, I remember you talking about those. How many
Yeah.
reviews do you think, if you had to assign a percentage, were fake versus real?
I think it was limited to a few companies. And the company that did do it, they charged me $130. Now, what some of these companies do is they probably wrongly guarantee like a set number of reviews,
Mm-hmm.
which if they send the book to 10 people, 10 people agree to read it, 10 people might hate the book and not finish it. So it's not really like possible to guarantee reviews. But what these companies do is they create fake profiles on Goodreads, look at the different reviews that have been left already, and I'm guessing just copy and paste a load of them into ChatGPT, and then just get ChatGPT to write a review based on them other reviews.
Yeah. And it's so
And
obvious when those reviews are fake too, because you can see that there's not anything specific to the story. It's all something that's been pulled from that back copy, and it's usually just very generic, but it's also very, very flowery with the wording, and it's heavy on the praise. Like you'll
yeah,
never see
I
them
know.
say anything bad about it.
Yeah, I know.
Well, just for people
Um,
who don't know, can you explain a little bit why people should not want to have AI reviews or AI written reviews, even if they're all 4 or 5 stars?
well, you write the book at the end of the day because you want human beings to read it. So it's not the same. It doesn't count for anything if no one's read it.
I think it was
That's,
Threads or something. There was like a little group from the Bookstagram community talking about when they go to a book's landing page on Goodreads or Amazon or wherever, and if they see that it's mostly AI written reviews, which, like you were saying, once you've seen a few, you start to just pick them out. And they were saying that it makes them feel a little less like they can trust that author because they don't necessarily know that the author didn't just plug those in themselves under a bunch of dummy accounts.
Yeah.
But also, yeah, it's not a real review. And so it's kind of like with anything where we're going to determine whether or not that's worth spending our money on. If we see fake reviews, it lowers that trustworthiness.
Yeah. It's difficult though because you do see some stories about authors like doing dodgy things with reviews, very bitter, twisted. I think there's the risk of you getting authors who just genuinely want people to read the book, who
Mm-hmm.
spent like ages working on it. They just want to get it out there, and they turn to these companies, and these companies are predatory with what they're doing and deceptive. So it is like fraudulent, and it's borderline criminal. The author then gets a bad rap because but they're the victim in it as well.
I have worked as a book influencer for some tour companies, or I've signed up for some. So I do think it might also differ a little bit on the company because I know that, for instance, you can't just sign up for some of these tour companies. They have to contact you. So obviously they're watching your account, making sure you actually have people commenting. And it's not just those throwaway comments like a heart emoji or something. And they are
Yeah,
looking at, your ratio of engagement or likes or whatever to your followers. They make sure that what you're posting is closely aligned with whatever genre that happens to be. So I think that makes a difference too, rather than say a company that will just let any genre sign up, even if the people that are going to be posting about it don't usually post about that genre, which means none of their followers are likely going to care anyway, because they have to know that at least to some extent, I would think.
yeah, oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, there's some companies that I would recommend. If you want me to share the names,
Yeah, we can share the
um,
ones you'd recommend.
yeah. So Love Book Tours, that is run by a person called Kelly Lacey. Her website's kellylacey.com. Yeah, and she does audiobook tours as well.
Hmm.
And she was really nice. And I think, like you say, she was like an example of one person who keeps an eye on the network and make sure there's no like deactivated accounts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you get like good value for that. There's another UK based reviewer called Anne Cater, Cater Cater. And her website is random things through my letterbox.blogspot.com.
What a cute
But she's brilliant and she works with a lot of media, but more sort of mainstream fiction for that one. And then the other one I'd recommend is I think it's got two names. Zulu Book Tours or Zulu's Book Tours is the main one, and I think that's also known goes by Compulsive Readers. They do a mix and you could do different durations. So I think one of the best things with book tours is that you can build a campaign. And that's what I
one.
did. I was trying to combine all of these tours. I didn't just do them at the same time. So what I did is like I tried to create a period of promotion. So I think it ran from um, October to the middle of December.
Okay. That's a pretty good
And
amount of time.
yeah, because you can book these tours. So the idea is to have someone promoting something every single day.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and you can book for 7 days, you can book for 10 days, you can book for 12 days. Some of them do like 3 or 4 days. But yeah, you could sort of tie it in. So this week, it's going to be this company promoting it. Week two, it's this company. Week three, it's that company. That way you can measure the success of each one.
Oh, that's clever.
Because if you do eight at the same time, you don't know which one's worked or hasn't.
Yeah, exactly. So what kind of results did you see then, and how much did they vary from one to the other?
Well, this is the thing. I wasn't happy with the results. I don't think this made any difference whatsoever. I think I spent close to $1,000. Um, I would never do it again.
Do
What
you
I
have
would
any
probably do
idea?
instead is would make a list of TikTokers that I thought would be worth it,
Hmm.
or and just reach out to them, agree fees with them, and go that way. What you should always, if you ever agree in a deal with someone, only ever agree to pay half up front,
Mm.
no more than half, and the rest of it gets paid on completion.
Was that an
If you
option
just
with any of these tours, or did they all require the payment up front?
they all required payments up front, yeah, which was another pain. You just don't hear from them. Like some of them don't even let you know when the tour started or send you like update emails and stuff. So you pay your money and then it's just like a bit of hit and hope kind of thing.
So how
Whereas
were you
if
able to tell when it did happen? Did you just have to keep refreshing social media platforms and see if your book popped up?
Yeah, in some cases, it's just looking at the website, seeing if any new posts went up about the book. The ones that I recommended, they were the ones who'd send reports at the end and send you all the links and stuff.
Okay.
They were really good, but some of them are atrocious. I know. And you just got to kind of think about what you want to get out of a campaign like this. Like book tours, historically, they've been good because they help people get reviews.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're as effective as they used to be because no one really reads blogs.
Right, yeah, and that used to be the main one that you'd see book tours on. It used to be a blog tour, and now it's almost always like Instagram or TikTok, I think are the two where you really see
Yeah.
it.
And unless you're getting really good influencers, like it's a waste of time because the algorithms don't even serve posts to certain people. You know what I mean? And you're just at the whim of the algorithm
Yeah,
that
that's
they're going
something
to do
else that
that.
I think people should keep in mind too, is the algorithm just changes on a switch. You have no control over that either. So what if it's one of those times when the Instagram algorithm has just like completely done a backslide into wherever, and now 50% of the people who would have been seeing it are no longer seeing it, but you've already paid for that time and you're locked into
Mm.
those dates.
You might only get like a couple of posts and they might be shared at like the wrong times. No one sees them.
Yeah, that's another thing too. So I know some of the tour companies that, and obviously I haven't promoted a book through them, but on the other end of it, they're very strict about you have to post before this time of day, for instance. They've gotten that figured out as to ideal posting times, and then they pass
Yeah.
that information on. And I think that if you decide to go at a different time or not post within that time frame, you can end up having your name written off their list of approved influencers or whatever it is.
Yeah. I mean, another thing to look out for, which would be probably the most powerful thing any book tour company could ever develop, is a reliable and engaged email list.
Mm,
Like, I didn't come across any that advertised that service. It was all driven towards social media and blogs. And if you can team up with other authors who've got thousands of email subscribers and they're engaged with what that person's writing about, then you're going to get way more interest in your book.
yeah, that's what
Way
I've
more.
heard even recently on a lot of different webinars and like the different conferences and stuff that are happening right now, virtually at least. A lot of them are saying that that's really the way to go now, not so much having a large social media presence or promoting the books on social media.
But you can send an email out, like just as an example. I did an email swap with someone, another author. They sent their email out. I got 31 new email subscribers from one email. Now, like, is social media going to do that for you? I didn't get anything like that from a book tour, and that cost me $1,000.
Versus a free email.
One free email, I got 31 new subscribers.
Oh, I was going to ask you how you think book tours could be improved, but do you think they need improvement or do you think that they should just be abolished?
Well, this is the thing. I was like, well, surely there's got to be better. Like maybe I've tried 10 book tour companies. Like it's not a full sample, so there's got to be good ones out there. So what I started doing recently was looking at different agencies that are a bit more well established, that have got like better reputations, um, and reaching out to them and seeing what they can offer.
Well, what were your
So
parameters for determining whether they had a better reputation? How did you
just
gauge
like
that?
more established client base, um, like you probably see on some websites now where they'll list like company logos and stuff like that. I mean, again, take that with a pinch of salt because anyone can put any crap on there. But you can. I was just doing a bit more research as well, and then what I did with these as well is set up calls. So like free intro calls where you can sort of tell them what you're looking for, tell them about your project, and then you can sort of feel them out. Because at the end of the day, they're trying to sell a service to you, so
Right.
you can get quite a lot out of them. And then like developing like a press kit and stuff like that. So the main sort of thing that they were going for is like, oh, we'll submit your book to competitions. Now you have to pay to submit to competitions.
Hmm.
And in the end, he came back and quoted me $30,000 for a 4 to 6 month campaign. Absolute nonsense.
My mind
Thirty
is
thousand
just
dollars.
automatically thinking of all the things you can buy for $30,000. I mean, you would need like a guaranteed number one best-selling list or something for that for like 6 months or a year. But I'm guessing they don't guarantee anything. It's just give us this
Yeah,
money and this could happen.
that's the thing with marketing. There are no guarantees. Like I know from doing PR, I do PR day to day. So I've reached out to journalists. I've done a press release, and I've sent that press release to them. And they just come back to you and say, "Oh, there's no human element to the story. It's just someone's just brought a novel out, kind of thing."
Mhm.
So they would just do the exact same thing and get the same answer. So and then at the end of the day, they're just going to turn around and shrug the shoulders and say, "Oh, well, we tried."
Right. And like we were talking about even before the show, so much of that you can do on your own, set aside 2 or 3 hours a week and say, okay, I'm going to work on this right now. I'm going to work on this
Yeah,
right now. So I think a lot of what any of this comes down to is just the time aspect and the convenience. Because like with the book tours, for instance, and again, I just want to point out, this was what your experience was like because I did talk to a couple of authors who were very enthusiastic about the results they received, but they also did not use any of the tour companies that you used. So I think
yeah,
that has to be a difference too, just based on how this tour company operates, what kind of people they're picking to be on their tours, how they're selecting those people to be on their tours. And I would think communication with the author has to be a big part of that too, because like you said, with some of them that they didn't even get in touch with you. They didn't even let you know which week it was posting. But I would think that, well, like with anything where you're hiring a professional, communication has to be key constantly.
yeah. Considering that they work in communications as well.
Right, and once you've paid someone for something, you want to know that you're going to get some sort of result, even if it's just that promised deliverable of 5 people posted about your book or 6 people reviewed it or whatever that is. But if you have to check up on that yourself, because it's one of those things where as soon as you start to see something slide, you might begin to wonder, well, what else is being like having a corner cut or what shortcuts are they taking? And then you end up with things like, maybe someone didn't post when they were supposed to, or 3 out of 10 people didn't post when they were supposed to, or that sort of thing.
Yeah, and bear in mind as well that if people don't do what they say, you've got very little recourse. Um, so you are a bit helpless. If you find the right person and they've got a good network, and it can be a game changer, but they're very few and far between.
Yeah, that how do you find them then? Because like you were saying too, you go to Google and look it up, but if you are not finding anything apart from what they're listing on their own website, which obviously they're going to be biased and only choose those things which are glowing reviews, and you can't ever verify whether the reviews are even real or not, so then there's that. But yeah, and if you don't have a large author network of your own with other people to ask, it just makes it so difficult to sort of weed out those people that are worth investing your book and your time in versus not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think marketing is the least favorite topic of almost every author I've spoken to, and you almost get that like full body shudder when you even bring the word up.
Yeah. I know. I'm trying to think of like new ways to approach it all now. I've got something that I'm working on. The gist of it is just writers pursuing subscription-based models rather than working with other like publishers and editors, agents and stuff like that, which I think
Yeah,
is possible. It's just a lot of work.
it is, yes. And even with traditional publishing, a lot of people are seeing more and more marketing being handed down to them instead of that traditional model that we sort of just take for granted or assume will happen based off, the 80s or the 90s even or the early 2000s and what we saw from there, but it's not the same anymore.
Yeah, I think there's got to come a time where, like, I know traditionally published authors, some people who've been published for like over a decade, and they're now looking at like self-publishing models because like they've had loads of books published and they're still not a full-time author. So like, what do you do in those situations? Like, and this is what I said at the start: the power of marketing is taking the power away from publishers and put it in your hands. It's just difficult. It's more easier than ever, I think, now with all the technology and tools we have available.
Oh, yeah, I completely agree with that.
And that's why these book tour companies exist, is because they've invested time reaching out to build networks and stuff like that.
Well, you sort of just answered what was going to be my final question, but that would be what should people look for if they've decided that at least the convenience, for instance, of a book tour is worth it to them? What are the
Yeah.
green flags?
Well, just asking people if they've already used them and what their experience was. I mean, I'd used a company that someone recommended to me. They loved them, and I thought they were horrendous. And then she ended up using them after me again and found that the experience was terrible.
Oh,
So these things don't always, they're not good forever. Sometimes you get lucky.
yes. Well, I appreciate your honesty and that you've come on here to share all of this. So, if anyone would like to know where to find you, where can they do that?
Yeah, best place to look is richiebilling.com. We've got loads of resources on there and free tools and whatnot. And you can find a bit more about my books as well.
All right. Thank you for listening, and be sure to check out the show notes for additional information. And please join me next week when Ian Craven visits, and he'll be telling us some of the many reasons why you should join an online writing community. Thanks again.